Hello, it's AJ, your host of Code 3 Life Reinvented. Thank you so much for spending a bit of your time today with both myself and my guest today, Kate Crane. I think today's conversation will be particularly interesting for those that are looking to move between different parts of corporate America, whether that's consulting or being on the client side or even moving into coaching, because my guest today, Kate, has done all three, and I'm looking forward to exploring those moves and where she's headed with things now. And so I think today would be a great opportunity for you to learn about those decision gates and what that looks like and what leaping from corporate into coaching looked like and felt like for Kate. And so with that, Kate, I'd love to bring you into today's conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest of Code 3.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Let me ask you a question. When you started your career, you started in the consulting world. Is that fair to say?
My post-business school career, which for all intents and purposes is the bulk of my career, I went into consulting.
I did some management consulting in my early post-MBA days myself. I've got to tell you, it wasn't for me. It's actually a part of my career I don't talk a whole lot about. Just wasn't a good fit for me. I quickly realized once I went from MBA school to management consulting that this was not the long-term fit for me. How did it feel to you?
I think I had a unique experience for a couple reasons. I think that business management consulting is a great second MBA. And I have a number of friends that thought about it that way. And some people, I have a lot of friends that are still lifelong consultants. And that is a different breed of bird to do that long term. But I respect it and I get it. I had a really diverse work experience before business school. And so I wanted something that was going to be another strong foundation, and consulting definitely was that for me. I was at Capgemini Consulting in their strategy group. They have a large tech, like IT group. And then they have at that point, like 250 people in the US doing strategy. But within strategy, I was really working on like process improvement. And what was really unique is that I was living in Houston. I was staffed on a client in Houston. So I didn't have to travel for the duration of my time. And then it wasn't staff augmentation work, but it was dedicated. I mean, I was effectively an FTE for 2.5 years with this client, and it was a startup. The client was called the Marine Well Containment Company. I can talk about it publicly. And they were a response to the Deepwater Horizon incident in the Gulf.
Oh, wow.
So it was a joint venture between the 10 biggest oil and gas producers in the Gulf. And the main 4 were Exxon, Chevron, Shell, and Conoco. And there were 6 others, Anadarko, Hess, Apache, Statoil. I used to be able to name all of them off the tongue. We were brought in to stand up this company, get office space, build a finance function, build a maintenance function. And so I went to go do that. It was really incredible that I was truly client-facing every day, running workshops, building editing processes and maintenance and emergency response across the gamut, procurement. You see the whole business. And I think within 6 or 9 months, I was managing a team. So now I'm 26 years old and effectively on this fast track to promotion to the managing level. It was a wild ride in that sense, but also very safe in that I was at this like lovely little joint venture and I could go home every night.
That sounds pretty idyllic. I remember my last assignment. I was living in San Francisco and commuting to a client every week up in the Portland area. And every morning I was on the 6:30 flight, Alaska Airlines up to Portland, and then came back Thursday night or Friday morning and then worked out of the San Francisco office. Mm-hmm. And one of the lead partners on the relationship, his relationship with his kids was through Skype. And he would help his kids do homework on Skype and all this stuff. And I thought, it's just not something I can do. Not in my wiring at all. And to your point, it's a special type of person who can get that and live that way. And okay, fine, more power to them. But for me, that was a huge signal and a red flag that, you know what, I want to be home and be around my children and all those things.
So I had 2 dogs and it felt silly, but they were very important to me. And I didn't know what I would do if I had to travel. So this first pivot is that I was at CAP. I had the opportunity to gun for management, a managing consulting level instead of I was a senior consultant. And I did it. And I completely burned out doing it. extra projects, I had 2 outside projects in addition to the 9 to 5 work I was doing on the client. And in the summer that I got that promotion, I also this is silly, but I had a new boyfriend and I bought a house. And the combination of those 3 things, and I got the promotion, and then naively in my brain, I was like, oh, it'll get easier after we get over that hump. No. The reality is that you get the promotion and then you stay there forever. You stay at that level forever. And so I started having panic attacks, and then thus addressed my lifelong anxiety, but that was the catalyst. And so 9 months after that, MarineWell was starting to phase out the consultants. I'd been on site for 2.5 years at that point. I think the whole project had been around for 3.5 years. And so it was time to phase us out. So the COO came to me and said, hey, you're kind of operating like my chief of staff. Would you want to stay? And so they let me name my number and write my job description. And I stayed on as effective. I had a funny title, but I was effectively the chief of staff to the COO and the CTO. And part of that was I get to make more money, work fewer hours. And if I stayed as a consultant, yes, I could have more experiences, but I might have to travel. If I didn't have the burnout, I might have stayed as a consultant, but I had that burnout and I needed a pause in my career. It wasn't that I paused, I slowed down the acceleration. I slowed down the velocity. And so then I stayed there for another 2 years and did some great work, led a lot of workshops, spent a lot of time with construction workers at what we called them, marine bases. But yeah, it was great work, great experience. We did a lot of cool things, but definitely at the end of my 2 years at MarineWell, I was bored and I'd hit a glass ceiling. And I hit a glass ceiling because I didn't have an engineering degree. It was time to move on.
Yeah, it's interesting. So as you were talking, you talked about slowing down the velocity. In my brain, I'm doing the math, you were probably early 30s or somewhere in there, I'm guessing, right?
28.
When a lot of people are still hungry and full of energy and let's keep going and let's climb that ladder and more promotion, more exposure, more all these things. And you stepped away from that to slow things down. How'd that feel?
It was intentional. I have had different mentors through my career. 2 people that I was talking to through this decision. And one is Elaine Agather, who's still a very close friend and mentor. And she is the head of JP Morgan Private Wealth for the center of the US. She's a complete badass, love her. And Elaine has 2 children, and she advised me that, yes, I'd be taking a step back, but do what's right for you. And then I had another family friend who was an ex-consultant. He worked all over the world for McKinsey. He had an incredible life, but I think at that point might have still been a bachelor. And he said, why would you step off this rocket ship? You are on the consulting work you're doing right now can take you all over the world to do all these things. Why would you want to step off of that escalator? And I was like, I get it, but your experience is different than my experience, and I am not you. And this is what I didn't say this to him. I'm thinking this in my head.
Right.
I appreciate that advice, but I'm not going to take it. And I'm going to do what's right for me as a human right now. And that is to go client side.
Not everybody makes that trade. And it's noble. You get so swept up in and leave it at that. Okay, so you hit the glass ceiling, MarineWell, and then what happens?
So I had started dating a boy.
Okay.
He's now my husband, spoiler alert. But we've been dating for a little bit, and he had only ever lived in Austin and Houston. And we were living in Houston at the time. And I lived in New York for a year after undergrad and had interned there for a couple of summers. And so I had a meaningful outside of Texas experience. And he said, hey, I think I want to move to Denver. And I thought, you should do that. I said, should absolutely explore that and do that. And I'm even more interested in you now that you have that desire to get out and diversify your perspective. And a half beat, maybe a couple of days later, he said, do you want to go with me to Denver? And so we've been dating for 6 months. Yeah. And so we started exploring. I was like, I don't know. I've never really been there. Let's go explore it. We took a couple of trips. So effectively at a year of us dating, we moved. got engaged shortly later, and then we got married almost exactly a year when we moved there. And we thought it would be an experiment, and we said, it's great. And if we don't like it, we'll move back. Let's try it. And I think I was 30 at the time. I was 31 when we moved. And we were there for 6 years. It was great. So moving to Denver, I had the opportunity to I gave myself the opportunity to really be intentional about what I did next. Didn't think I wanted to go back to oil and gas. We didn't talk about my pre-MBA work, but I was a line cook in a kitchen for a bit. A huge personal passion for restaurants and hospitality and cooking for people. And what does that mean? And Denver, interestingly, has a lot of CPG, a lot of dairy, a lot of holistic things, tea, like Celestial Tea is there, White Wave, which is now Danone, is there. So I was exploring that, and then also found DoorDash. And so another spoiler, I joined DoorDash, and it was I was excited to go into tech. I'd never worked at a true startup in that like techie way. And it was definitely the most impactful decision I've made in my career, was like taking that leap of joining this distant third in the delivery wars. And I wanted to join the restaurant team, but they didn't offer me that. They offered me to join the driver logistics org. So I did that for a year, which is not what I wanted, but I wanted to join them. And it was a wonderful decision.
So Denver has a special place in my heart. I grew up in Littleton. Fun fact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm still a big diehard Broncos fan, and our son lives in the Denver area now. So it's a special place. And I hope you found it to be special while you were there for your 6 years.
We loved it. Our first house was walking distance to Broncos Stadium. And then for us, it was really important. It was like a 15-minute drive to Red Rocks. So it was
huge.
Great.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I miss Red Rocks. I miss Red Rocks. The best venue ever to see live music. Now, you did some really incredible things. You grew a big business unit. I'd love to hear more about that, because as I look at what you did, it felt like you took something from 0 to 60, but a whole lot bigger than that, I think. Tell us more about that experience.
I did the first year on the driver side of the business.
Yeah.
And at kind of ending that year, there were some things changing in that org. There was a lot of automation, and that was just not my jam. It needed to be automated. It was very manual. So yay, great. But I was kind of seeing the writing on the wall. And at the same time, some people that I really respected in the local org, it's hard to describe what that is, basically the head of the US, had moved over to this new product called DoorDash Drive. For people that don't know what Drive is, because nobody does, if you order a burrito from Chipotle from their website or their app, it's actually a DoorDash driver that is delivering that. DoorDash Drive is the white label side of the business. We're just using the existing driver fleet to fulfill first-party deliveries that somebody is taking through their own website. So when I joined that team, I think we did 380,000 deliveries that quarter, which roughly equated to 9 million annualized revenue. Over the next 3 years, I effectively ran US restaurants. I say effectively, my first role was like account manager, but I became the general manager of the US. My boss oversaw all restaurants, and at points I had Canada, and points I had Australia, and points I had pizza and catering, and startups reorg all the time. But the most consistent thread was US restaurants. And I had all segments: enterprise, mid-market, long tail, mom and pop. And so we had different go-to-market strategies, kind of variations on a theme for each of the 5 segments. And so I could be working with a channel partner for the long tail in one meeting, and the next meeting I could be pitching Wendy's or pitching Popeyes and trying to get them to launch, come with us, pick us, launch, roll out, and then run marketing. But over that 3 years, we kind of attacked each segment, and I built a team to manage all those segments. And when my last quarter on that team, we did 20 million deliveries, annualized over 500 million in revenue. It was fun. It was wild. COVID was in the middle of that. That wasn't the reason that we achieved those numbers. Honestly, like our sales pipeline and onboarding pipeline, we compressed 9 months into 3 weeks, because people that were like dipping their toes in and thinking, like Whataburger, we had a 9-month rollout plan. After COVID, they were like, no, okay, so we're going to turn it all on in the next 6 weeks. Our new sales went to 0 for months, because we just accelerated everything, and then we had to reinvent again. And rebuild the pipeline.
So it was fun. It was, wow. It was probably, I'm guessing, full of a lot of success and twists and turns.
A lot of success, a lot of hard work, a lot of in-person meetings. I have two women that will always give me grief for the roadshow I made them go on one summer because we had just a bunch of restaurants that were rolling out. And I was like, I think we need to go be in person with everybody. So I took my account manager and my marketing partner, and we did 15 cities on 3 trips. It was crazy. It was a lot of work, but it was really fun. And DoorDash has an incredibly rigorous operating structure, but they're very flexible in how you achieve that. Yes, there were days that I might have stayed at the office till 7 and I might have worked until 1, but there was a lot of flexibility as well. I had people that were able to create space for the things they wanted to do. I have a woman that I hired that still works there, that was a semi-professional water polo player. And she made space to go practice and play on her team and coach a college team and still got all of her work done. And so there's a lot of flexibility.
So what did you learn about yourself through all this?
I hesitate to say this because it sounds pompous, but no one works harder than me. A lot of people work harder than me, but that mindset of I can do this, I can do hard things. Mm-hmm. If you don't live that way, think that way, it's really hard to thrive at DoorDash because it's just kind of like a foundation. And it doesn't mean that you have to grind. It just means that you need to have confidence to solve a problem that nobody else can solve. And that's what delivery was at that point. Nobody came from delivery. So we were all solving things that, maybe the general manager at Pizza Hut knew, but they weren't doing it at the scale that we were doing it. It was genuinely different and harder. So work really hard. And then learning how to manage teams of young people who are also want to work hard, are trying to figure out what life looks like, are trying to figure out what they want to do with their careers, and are trying to find balance in working hard but not burning out. I learned a lot about how to manage that.
Wow. And so that's just a great run, and to do that all through COVID, which sounds like actually helped the business, but probably was made operating very difficult at the same time. Let's jump forward a bit. You're doing something quite a bit different. I'd love to hear how you got to what you're doing, what led you there, and the challenges you experienced to get there.
There's one more step I want to talk about. When I went from consulting, or I went from the client side to DoorDash, it was, I want to go to food. I went from driver to merchant because I'd never been on the revenue side of the equation. I'd always been on the cost side. And I saw that as a risk professionally, that cost side is what gets laid off first. I wanted to be on a revenue generating side. And I also love restaurants. So I wanted to be on the merchant side. So that was the move to drive. But after those 3 years, I was pregnant and I was about to have my first child, and I was grinding, and I didn't know what that was going to look like to be a parent and to be a general manager at DoorDash. And I was looking at my peers that were trying to do it, and I didn't love the examples. Sure, I can create a different example, but I didn't know if I could. So opportunistically, as I'm in my 3rd trimester, I'm approaching this life-changing event. There's this really lovely human named Gokul Rajaram that DoorDash inherited through an acquisition. And he was standing up a corporate development strategy team. DoorDash had never had corp dev. And so I applied and I moved over to corp dev. And so similar to I want to be on the revenue side of the equation. Okay, I've built this business and I'm burning. I've already burned out once. I'm seeing the burnout happening. And I had this opportunity to go learn about investments and acquisitions and business development. And Gokul is really cool. So I want to go work for this guy. Through this negotiation, and Gokul has children and was very graceful in acknowledging this maternity leave. I went on mat leave and handed over my department. I hired my backfill. I handed over my department to this new person. And when I came back from mat leave, I joined corp dev. And that was layers of very intentional decisions. So I did corp dev for about 9 months, I think, and never did a transaction. But the point of our team was not the transaction. It was the decision. It was the building relationships in different landscapes. I owned the restaurant ecosystem, alcohol, cannabis, and parcel. And so my job was just to go build relationships and build a point of view on where we might play. And I learned that I'm not a biz dev person. I learned that I really like being an operator. I like actually generating revenue, not the theory of generating revenue. And I can go back to biz dev tomorrow and it'll be fun and be great. But that's not really what gets me to tick. And at the end of that 9 months, what forced it to be the end of the 9 months is that a peer from Drive had gone over to be the chief operating officer of this other startup called Flock Safety. Very well capitalized, Andreessen Horowitz backed. I think they just raised a round from Tiger Global when I joined. But he asked me to come over and stand up strategy and operations, which is the core operating function at DoorDash at Flock. And it was effectively like an offer I couldn't refuse. And so I did not leave DoorDash because I was done with DoorDash. I left DoorDash because I got an offer I couldn't refuse. I still love all of my friends at DoorDash and talked to many of them this week. Flock was a whole different barrel of monkeys, law enforcement technology, opportunity to go actually back to some of the inventory management stuff I'd done in oil and gas, working with physical hardware, warehouses, distribution, but also working in tech. So that was a fun 2.5-year stint and definitely flexed some new muscles there as well.
Yeah, the offer you can't refuse, you take it. It's well capitalized, Andreessen Horowitz. Hello. That's really cool stuff.
So I did Flock for 2.5 years. It kind of had run its course for me, and there's a whole story behind that, but too long to tell in this episode. I went to OpenTable for a year and ran go-to-market strategy for them. And at the end of that, a couple things were happening. Long story short, it just wasn't a fit. I left that experience thinking, well, what do I do next? Actually, got an offer to be a CEO of a small restaurant tech company, and I decided that company was not the right fit for me. For years, I've managed young people, and on the side, family friends have said, oh, I have this son or daughter who is going through this decision point. Can you talk to them about DoorDash? Or can you talk to them about their career? Or can you help them figure out what their major should be? And I've taken, yes, always, no problem. So this is December of last year. My husband is a guy, and one of his fishing buddies, 4 months after a trip, texted him and said, hey, can Kate talk to my daughter? She's going through this decision right now, and I think she'd have some good advice. So I don't know this person. I don't know his daughter. But yeah, so I take her to dinner. We had a lovely time. I'm just lit up, engaged in helping her through her decision. And I left that dinner and thought, this is it. This is what I need to be doing. I also have 2 small children. At this point, I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. My mother is ill. And I thought this is the time for me to just to do exactly what I want to do and make space for all these other things in my life.
So now you've got your career coaching business, and it's called Direction Over Perfection.
Yes. I'm focusing on young adults. I define young adults as anywhere in your 20s. And I define it really as starting at 20 as your sophomore year in college. I can give you the whole spiel about why the current state of the job market and the difficulty getting a job out of school and the value of a college degree versus really needing to have some work experience to get that first post-grad job. I really hope your first post-grad job is not your first actual job, because that's hard. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult for a lot of professionalism reasons, not because you don't know how to do the work. But there's the people that are trying to get their first job, that are trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And then there's a whole archetype of people that have gotten that first job. They're out of school. Maybe they're 2 or 3 years out of school. And they say, I hate this. I had a client this spring who had done all the things, all the internships to go into a marketing agency. She did 2 or 3 years in the marketing agency and said, you know what? I really hate agency life, which I actually think is pretty common. And so we worked through what's next. How do we take that value of what you've done and transition that from the role and the responsibilities to the value creation? Mm-hmm. And how do we transition that value creation to a different industry? And so that's my approach to helping people pivot. And then I have a handful of mid-career people that are really more just friend referrals as well that I help all the time. I'll say that my mentors in my 20s, my parents could have said the same words to me that they were saying, and it wasn't going to land. Yeah. And so I do think that there's value as well, just to having I see the parent as much as a client as the young adult. What are you looking for as a parent, and how can I help you with what you know your child needs, but they can hear it from a different voice?
So with all this being said, when you think about your career arc and what you're doing now, how do you think about fulfillment? What is fulfillment to you?
Thank you for using the word fulfillment because I really struggle with work-life balance. Fulfillment for me is a balance of my family, and I will separate my husband from my children because I think you have to invest in those relationships separately. My friends, hobbies, what kind of like mental intellectually stimulates me, which is both friend interactions and reading or working out. And then I'm a worker. I love my children, but I am not somebody who wants to work in the home. I want I want an income, and I know that about myself, and I like to work hard and make big monies. And so I need kind of three elements. And so when I think about fulfillment, it's my family, my relationships, what makes me happy outside of those things, which is friends and reading and exercise, and then my work and feeling fulfilled professionally.
Is there any part of you that has an interest in going back into that world at all? Or do you still have that interest?
I do. It has to be for the right role. I've worked in OpenTable is a front of house concept. And I love OpenTable as a company, and the people are wonderful. The reservation space is really complicated right now. There's these wars happening between 7 Rooms, which is owned by DoorDash, Resi, which is owned by Amex, and OpenTable, who's owned by Booking Holdings, but is effectively independent. It's tough. And then I'm very passionate about helping small businesses be profitable. And restaurants are small businesses, whether you're a franchise owner or you have a standalone concept. And that comes to like back of house technology, like 7 shifts. I have a bunch of friends that work at 7 shifts. And so I'm still fascinated by the space, but I have strong opinions about the right company for me to join. And then generally, I just love restaurants. I love going to new restaurants and trying new food. And at this point in my life, I used to be obsessed with the food. Right now, I'm obsessed with the hospitality and the experience and celebrating restaurants that are really good at that, really good at helping you feel seen when you walk in. That's where I really become a nerd.
You have reinvented yourself several times throughout the course of your career. What do people get wrong about reinvention?
That it's scary. And they're not wrong that it's scary, but even if you try something and it doesn't work, you'll learn from it. I'll acknowledge going to OpenTable 9 months, that wasn't a success. That didn't work. And as I just said, I loved the company, and that's why it was hard to leave. It was not the right role for me. It was not the right combination of Kate and her skills and the role and what was needed. And I'm happy for anybody at OpenTable to hear that message. I love the people still, but it was very painful to leave. But I learned from it. I like to play this game of what's the worst that can happen. The first big leap that I took professionally was I moved to New York right after undergrad. And I did all the right things to get a job at an art gallery in Chelsea, which is my first career as an art historian by training. But I graduated in 2008 and I got laid off 6 months in. And that's kind of where the line cook in a kitchen came in. There were no jobs to be had in the luxury markets, especially if you had a peanut of experience of 6 months. So what's the worst case that happens if you send your child to New York? Yeah, I didn't get mugged, but I lost my job. I was working in a kitchen and I was making $200. I didn't make any money. And I ended up moving home after that year because I got to near the end of my lease and it was like, what am I doing here? Why did I come to New York? Do those reasons still exist? Should I stay? And I moved home and I lived with my family and I worked for my family. And so if that is a worst case scenario, that's actually not that bad. I did have financial security of my parents helping. I didn't become homeless. There are worst case scenarios. But for me in my situation, I have multiple points where I've learned resilience in my life. And that was a big one. I'm very risk tolerant in my career because what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work. You go somewhere else? Okay, I can go somewhere else.
That's a really great way to think about things. I use that framework to do what I'm doing now. Like ultimately, what is the worst that could happen leaving my world of financial services and doing what I'm doing now? But then there's that element of fear Like, I think that just really trips people up. Yeah, but I'd lose my identity. I'd lose the certainty. I'd lose my way of life potentially. And it's that fear that just keeps people, my mind keeps people so trapped or stuck or wherever they are right now. Would you agree?
Yeah. I will never tell anybody that their feelings aren't valid, but we can talk through that fear and kind of unravel where it's seated. And either you can accept it and then great, stay where you are, or you can choose to not accept it and get comfortable with it, get comfortable with discomfort. I practiced yoga for a long time, and that is a core concept. Accept your discomfort and what you're sitting in, like physically sitting in right now.
I'm laughing as you say that because all I do when I do yoga is just suffer in my discomfort. I'm not very flexible.
That's what it is.
Thanks for giving me that tip. Next time I try a yoga class, I'll remind myself that's what I need to be focusing on. That's okay. Oh my goodness. You know, given everything, your career journey and what you do now, what is something that you could advise people who are wherever they are in their career, early career, mid-career, late career, that they can take away today from this conversation that they can employ when they're thinking about reinvention or transformation?
Yeah. I think I'm going to give you two answers because they're slightly different tips based on where you are in your career. I'm going to start with the thing that should probably come second, but I'm going to start with this first. So if you're trying to decide what to do next, either if you want to push for a promotion or you want to think about something else, maybe a different role in the company, or you want to go somewhere else entirely, in trying to decide what to do, think about where you want to be in 2 years. 15 years ago, it was like, what's your 5-year plan? And I hate 5-year plans because I don't know what's going to happen in a year. But I think a 2-year horizon is more appropriate for now. And so I've had lots of different versions of this prompt in my life. And it's like, do you want to be a chief operating officer or a chief product officer? And what do we need to go learn next to kind of move you in that path? Mm-hmm. Or what do you want to be in? Where do you want to be in 2 years? Do you want to keep moving up monetarily? Do you want to move up in this company? Do you want to go learn new things? Do you want to have a different life entirely because you're about to have a child? Do you want to make space for your parents? I mean, and those are things that resonate with me now at 40 that wouldn't have resonated with me at 30, right? So you have to think about, what do you want your life to look like? And then let's talk about your job, how your professional life fits into that. Maybe that 2-year is the job. Great. Maybe that 2-year is more like, I want space in my job. Yeah. You don't want to push. You want to be really good at what you do so that you can make space. The next question, the kind of complementary question is, what do you want to do? When I help people through this exploration process, I ask them, what are you good at? What comes easily to you? Where did you excel in school? What do people ask your advice for? What are you passionate about? And for me, those things are data and financial models and art. I like my example because they aren't naturally connected. But for me, the art is, yes, art, but as an art historian, it's creativity and analysis and thinking about creative solutions. And so those things actually do come together really naturally in business strategy, which is really what I did for the bulk of my career. And so I encourage people to kind of create lists of these things. And maybe there's overlapping things on those lists. And wonderful, great, you have a plan. But maybe there's things that are complementary that give you kind of like some direction of the activity I ask people to do.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks, Kate. And how can people find you?
My website is directionoverperfection.com. Okay. Get ready for some consistency. My Instagram and TikTok handles are @directionoverperfection. And I actually also have a podcast where I tell the stories of women that have careers like mine that are meandering to show people what those pivots look like. It's just a wealth of examples, and it's Direction Over Perfection with Kate Crane.
Love it. All right. Well, I'll have all that in the show notes. Kate, thank you so much for coming on the show today. You've got a remarkable career, and thank you for being so open and honest about your journey and some of those twists and turns. I greatly appreciate it. And everybody, Kate gave us some great tips there at the end. What do you want your life to be like in 2 years? Let's not think about 5-year plans, but 2-year plans, something more achievable and not so far out. I mean, who can predict 3 years even at this point in time? And what are you good at? Make some lists. What lights you up? Maybe there's some commonalities of the various lists you create that jump out to you that you could sink your teeth into for your next act. So thank you, Kate, for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate it. If this conversation resonated with you, I invite you to check out our website, the More website, bemorealigned.com, home of More, a destination for you accomplished professionals who've been successful but know something no longer fits. You can always reach me. I'd love to hear from you at hello@bemorealigned.com. And remember, life doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It waits for the moment you decide to stop settling. When your status quo feels like status, know it's time to listen and act. I'm AJ Jones. Until next time, stay honest, stay aligned, and don't wait for the wake-up call.